What's happening, Spider friends, and welcome to the Scarlet Spider Showcase, which is part of the Black Cat the Heist DLC. This suit can be unlocked after completing the entire campaign, all the random crimes, the screwball missions, and the other stuff, the Black Cat father guy, whatever. So this suit is based on the Big Time or Stealth suit, and it is forever locked in the red position by Madam Web, and it is worn by Kaine Parker, or Spider Kaine, Scarlet Spider, whatever you want to call him, and it has no DLC powers, which it would have been cool if the suit came equipped with the spider stingers. So to kind of like help with Kaine's immense strength, I've given him like a power increase, so to speak. So when he hits people, it would be much harder. Because if people didn't know this, Kaine is actually probably about 5 to 10 times stronger than the original Spider-Man. Being the imperfect clone that he was, there was a lot of issues that happened with his creation. Now, just to go over some of this, because I'm not gonna lie, some of you guys do kind of bother me a little bit. This is not a straight lore series like Batman, because I'm not an expert of Spider-Man, nor do I claim to be. I do like Spider-Man from the 80s and 90s. I stopped reading Spider-Man comics after one more day because they were stupid. Most of the Spider-Man books that came after didn't really interest me at all. It's great to hear that Spidey and MJ are getting back together, but they are not married, which further shows that Marvel hates married life, more or less. No more than DC, though. So as you can see, the strength that I've given Kaine, it's very reminiscent to his comic book counterpart. And one thing I love about Kaine is he is an angry guy. Well, I mean, his brain is kind of all messed up. You know, cloning is not really a perfected art, so to speak. But just playing as this character is really helping with my inner rage. Tried to record this a couple times and my cats were running around the house screaming like crazy people. So yeah, whatever happens, happens. So first off, this character was created in 1994 and he was cloned by a dude called the Jackal. And if you don't know who the Jackal is, just a little bit of history on him, just keeping it very brief. The guy was a renowned scientist, more or less, who ended up having all his funding gone, and he had an eerie infatuation with Gwen Stacy, which Gwen did not reciprocate his feelings, and probably didn't even know this dude had a thing for her. After her death, the Jackal, the scientist, was so enamored by her that he brought her back to life through a cloning process that did not go well. Along with Gwen Stacy, he cloned Peter Parker several times, and his first clone of Peter Parker, he dubbed Kaine. And Kaine was kind of insane. While he did retain a lot of Peter Parker's brilliant intellect, and his powers were upgraded even more so, his mind was kind of not all there. While he could do sciencey stuff, when it came to just, you know, the whole good and evil thing, Kaine became a bad guy, ended up causing a lot of problems for the different Spider-Men during something called the Clone Saga. And I don't want to get into the Clone Saga because it's kind of a love or hate thing with Spider-Man fans. Either you like it or you don't. And there is a huge group of people that hate the Clone Saga. I'm on the fence. I like some aspects of it. It gave us, of course, Kaine, who is one of my favorite Spider-Men, along with Ben Reilly, who was a very cool 90s Spider-Man. And, you know, it gave us some things we didn't like, namely, husband abuser Peter Parker, who beat up MJ when she was with child because he was kind of losing his mind. I mean, in his defense, not defending his actions, but Peter was going through kind of an identity crisis because Kaine and Harry Osborn and even Ben kind of convinced Peter Parker that he was the clone and that Ben Reilly was the real Spider-Man. And even though Ben also had feelings for Peter's wife, he allowed the clone Peter Parker to stay with MJ, and he stuck around in New York City while Peter and MJ moved out of New York for a time, and Ben retained the mantle of Spider-Man and all this other stuff. Which, yeah, And during, I don't remember if it was an argument or a fight between Peter and Ben, that Mary Jane ended up being caught in the crosshairs. Now, the accumulation of the spider clone thing wasn't until many years later, where the Green Goblin and Ben Reilly were squaring off, and as Ben was mortally wounded, we finally realized that Ben Reilly, because Marvel said so, was the clone, and he disappeared like most clones do when they expire. Think of kind of like Jedis or Siths or whatever. So, I mean, up until that time, everybody thought that... Well, not everybody. I didn't think Ben was really Spider-Man. He was a cool character, taking the name of Uncle Ben and all that fun stuff. But Kaine is the more interesting character because while you have Goody Two-Shoes Ben Reilly, Kaine is a bad guy to the core, and that is because he is the imperfect clone of Spidey. Now, some of the notable things that Kaine did is he actually framed Spider-Man and Ben Reilly by going around and murdering a bunch of Peter Parker's, we can say, kind of rogues gallery or Sinister Six. Of course, this was all retconned later because Doc Ock came back and some other Spider villains did over time. But for a while, they were basically destroyed by Kaine. So, yeah, Kaine didn't really mess around. I don't know if he was trying to do, the whole superhero thing, or if he was just really angry at Peter and Ben. I would say that arc gets very confusing. Oh, come on. But he did go ahead and take out a bunch of bad guys. I would put a comparison similar to how Red Hood kind of ran things a little bit in parts of Gotham, where he went around targeting different Batman villains lethally. He was still trying to kind of do what, you know, the superhero would do, but at the same point, he took it up, you know, an umph degree. Kaine did the same thing, but also he hated Peter Parker and Ben, so he decided to frame both of them because, well, his DNA would be all over the place, so it'd be very easy to blame Spider-Man or Peter Parker for the murder of these different characters. Now, another thing that is causing Kaine to be kind of crazy back in the day, which I believe was fixed over time, but the problem with clones is the cloning process is not 100% accurate. There are certain things that, for one, clones don't stay around very long. So the cloning is kind of temporary. You have what's known as cellular degeneration, meaning over time the cells break down, and, well, Kaine was just like all the other clones, just like what happened to Gwen Stacy clone and some of the Parker clones. The only exception to cellular degeneration, I believe, was Ben, but you could argue when he was fighting the Osborn as the Green Goblin or whatever, that his cellular degeneration was happening, and he was going to be deceased anyway during that fight. Or you could argue that when he was mortally wounded, that's how he bought it. It's really... It's hard to... Hence the clone thing. You never know. But anyway, Kaine, suffering from this, and Peter not wanting to destroy the guy, even though, you know, he was hardcore evil, and a pretty tough challenge for Spider-Man and Ben Reilly, because he is literally... I would say he was more superior Spider-Man than Doc Ock. His strength was increased, his intelligence was, like, better, his stamina was better, his resilience to things, his spider sense could see into the future. There was a lot of things about this character that he was just super OP, you know? And, eventually, I guess he had a breaking period, and he ends up moving to St. Louis, where he falls in love, even though he is dying. And he's with this woman for some time, and something happens. I don't know if Kaine does it, or if somebody who was targeting Kaine, you know, gets to his girlfriend, and she ends up, you know, no more her. But it's around this time that Kaine, he's trying to redeem himself, but also not. He also gets something known as the Mark of Kaine, which is this really... it's confusing to really bring it up, but that's important about the character. And he also has this entity, inside of him called... Will you stop that? It's called the Other, which is... Does anybody remember the weird, mutated spider creature that Peter Parker turned into in the animated series of the 90s and some other Spider-Man comics? It's like this really freaky brown spider thing. That thing is known as the Other, and it's this creepy entity that lives inside of Kaine, more or less. And when Kaine has died a couple times, which he has because, I mean, you know, he's the evil version of Peter, and he's done a lot of crazy stuff. The Other has been known to bring Kaine back to life. Although, sometimes he looks humanoid, and other time he looks like a creepy spider creature thing. But, anyway, so for a long time, Kaine is kind of gone. He's around either feeling super mopey for his past actions, or he's really angry at Ben and Peter, because, you know, I would believe that Ben sees Kaine as kind of like an older brother type thing, and Peter kind of sees him, I don't know, like a brother, but as a family member. And they have some interesting things that happen to them after Ben's death, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So during the whole Spider Island arc, which is much, much later in the whole Spider-Man lore or history or comic books, whatever you want to talk about, Kaine is actually brought back to help with the Spider Island event, which pretty much everybody in New York City became a Spider-Man because of the Spider Queen, but it wasn't a good thing. Like, it was really bad. And if you want more info on that, you can just read Spider Island. But Kaine stole the stealth suit to try to rescue Peter Parker, because reasons. And because he was a clone, it was locked in its red kind of... You know how the suit glows green? Well, when Kaine wore it, it grew red. And that was kind of how you could tell the difference between Peter and Kaine during the whole Spider Island thing. After defeating the Spider Queen and all that fun stuff, Madam Web decides to alter the big-time suit, and that is the suit that you're seeing right now. I don't really know what happens when she alters it, but the suit becomes all red because Kaine is, of course, a clone. It would be interesting to see what the big-time suit would look like if Madam Web enhanced Peter Parker in the suit. But this is probably one of my favorite Spider-Man costumes, actually, for a spider character, or a spider, as they call them, the different spider characters. Come on, big guy, you're really getting on my nerves here. Thank you. Okay, they're done. Sweet. So, because he doesn't want to stick around in New York City for, I don't know, reasons, he ends up going to Houston. He has his own adventures. And he's actually still there as part of the Spider... I can't remember if it's called Spider-Gaiden, Spider-Gideon, Spider-Geddon. There we go, which is basically the whole Into the Spider-Verse thing again. The sequel to what happened to the vampire spider people. Yeah, if you like Spider-Verse, yay for you, clap for yourself. I, for one, Spider-Verse to me is Marvel's lazy excuse for basically killing off different Spider-Men. And guess what? They just killed off 2 popular spider people and sent one spider lady to another Earth with no means of getting back. Oh, come on! That's just... Well, that's kind of how I feel with after reading Spider-Geddon, the first 2 issues recently, thanks to a friend of mine, because I will not pay for it. But it's good to stay informed mostly. So, Peter and Scarlet Spider, they work together off and on before he goes to Houston. And after the demise of Ben Reilly, he takes on the role of the Scarlet Spider as kind of a tribute to his brother. And the next time he met Ben Reilly was during the Spider-Verse. And he actually came pretty close with this other Ben Reilly, who is from, ironically, Earth 94, which, you guessed it, is supposed to be an Earth based on if 94 Ben Reilly was still around. And Ben Reilly from Earth 94 in the Spider-Verse heroically sacrificed himself when they took out an important factory from the Inheritors, which are the evil vampire spider people who use the life force of the spider totems, the spider characters, the different spiders of the Spider-Verse. And Ben wanted to save his brethren and sistren, so he blew up the base with himself in it. Now later you find out that Ben Reilly has survived from Earth 94, and he will play a big role with Kain and Superior Spider-Man in the Spider... I keep wanting to call it Gaiden. It has a stupid name. Spider-Geddon, which is basically like Armageddon, but spiders. So both Kain and Ben Reilly will have a big role in that, along with Superior Spider if you liked him. So, yay! Just talking a little bit about the powers and abilities of the suit, because I really didn't get to get into it. So since Kain is the imperfect clone of Spider-Man, he has, of course, the superhuman strength, the speed, agility, the reflexes, all that other stuff that you would expect of him. But at the same time, his strength is incredibly more powerful than regular Spider-Man. At one point, he was able to beat the Rhino while he was unconscious, and he could also fight both Peter Parker and Ben Reilly at the same time, along with another spider clone back when he was Kaine, which I would say he kind of looked like an assassin wearing a purple cape. You know, he was an interesting guy. His spider sense was so developed at one point in the comic books. Like I said, this guy was so OP that he could view into the future. Over time, his spider sense became more like Peter's, and then eventually he lost it altogether and must rely on his superhuman reflexes and just kind of like his common sense and the abilities of his suit, which he has since upgraded a little bit. Now, because he is wearing the because he is wearing the big-time suit and it's been augmented, he has the different stealth abilities thanks to Peter's Horizon Labs suit, which he did use against the Spider Queen. It gives him kind of like an invisibility to do some stuff. He also is immune to sonic-based attacks, and there was some other stuff that happened when it was augmented into the red by Madam Web. He also has, as I mentioned, the kind of like spider claw things that come out, and in the Spider-Verse, they were able to come out all over his body as the spikes. And there you go, that is Spider-Kaine, the last of the Black Cat DLC suits. I hope you guys enjoyed this showcase. In the comment section below, tell me what you thought about this spider lore, or history, or origin, whatever. I hope you guys have a great night, and thanks for watching. God bless and happy gaming.